Hello again. I'm just getting back into my sleeping bag right now. I love being outside and being in a city. It's awesome to have a patio that I can sit on and be outside in and cuddle up in, or not cuddle up. That's a weird word. Snuggle up there. Yeah, that's probably a better way. That's more of a Care Bear word. Snuggle up. So I'm in my sleeping bag and I just kind of wanted to segue off of my last video because there was something interesting that happened, and this kind of shows an example of the ripple. And so I started off watching this video on YouTube of this amazing woman named Crystal, and she was basically relaying a very positive message. And I only got through a little bit of the beginning of it. And then I felt inclined to create the video that I had previously done tonight. You can go back and see it. It showcases some of my, or all of my I Foresee stuff on YouTube. Anyways, so I watched a portion of this video, stopped, and then I recorded my own video. And in that video, I kind of felt, because I was, in a sense, watching myself, especially at those times where I don't know what to say. And sorry, the cat is looking at the orange. And I was realizing that I was just becoming more confident, or just saying whatever I felt like saying. That, see, normally I feel there has to be some sort of, we'll call it message or teaching or something like that, like a purpose of each audio. And in that one that I just did tonight, I realized that I just free flowed and talked about what was interesting to me, what interested me. And interestingly enough, after I finished doing that, the video that I watched of Crystal's, she was talking about Source's guidance towards us letting go of worrying about what other people think. And it kind of, in that moment, shaped the aspect of this podcast that I'm writing is, or creating, is that it's not necessarily about teaching. It's just about talking, sharing, discussing, and possibly even bringing a framework for considering how things could be different. You know, the interesting thing was a lot of these systems that, well, all of them, I was in a part of doing them. Like, I participated in all of them. And so I understand being in those systems feels like that's the way it's supposed to be and that's the way it has to be. However, if we were to open up and breach the discussion of doing things differently, then maybe that's what these audios are about, is doing things differently. It's not necessarily to say that the bad was old and we have to get rid of the bad, but consider ways of doing things differently with regards to everything that we do. And partly, I think that could be a very scary thing for many people, doing things differently, especially at such a large variation, but all beneficial. Because I, for one, believe that everyone on the planet should be equal. And honestly, they're not. The opportunity is not the same. The structures are not the same. And there's no reason why it can't be. There is, because it was set up that way so that there would be like goals, something for people to work towards, like that carrot. There needed to be a carrot, so there had to be a variation. And then, of course, the fear of going the other direction too, of going into that harder life. However, I truly do believe that we don't have to do that. We don't have to continue to struggle at all. That if we could, and I think in a sense we're being given the opportunity, if we want to see it as that, an opportunity to realize, hey, things are not the way I thought they were. actually, and they're not anything like we thought they were. And this could be an opportunity to say, okay, well, how are we going to do things differently now ourselves, rather than wait for a savior to come in and tell us how to do it differently. See, my understanding was that we were controlled by something called a savior program, and I've talked about it a little bit, but just to segue it in here, is that the savior program would be that we were sitting here, or that we would sit here waiting for someone to ride in on the white stallion to say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. As opposed to, I guess in a sense, step forward and decide that, oh, no, I'm going to do it this way. Or I'm going to make the decision that gets me to where I need to go. And, the more people who decide that they're going to live their own form of life definitely makes it hard to collect tax and loosh and all that lovely stuff. So definitely that wasn't what they wanted. Nonetheless, as I mentioned on the video earlier, is I don't know, in a sense, I felt that I boldly stepped forward and kind of got what I think is happening out of just being within my own voice, like me talking to myself kind of idea, and speaking to each other. See, the interesting thing about a journey of waking up is there isn't just your eyes were closed and then they're awake. There's different stages that people seem to, or at least I went through. And there's the initial of being within, and then starting to, at least for me, I was playing a lot of video games, as I had said, and there were major events happening in the world, and this was 2019 to 2020. And initially, I took the lockdown as a great time to play Red Dead Redemption 2. And that video game is very intense. For basically, you live in the game. You do everything you need to do in your daily life. You're kind of like you can do in the game in a sense, including hunting, and it was just such an intense game. And so originally, I took this time as an opportunity just to play that game. It was really a real nice, relaxed game. I could play 8 and 10 hours a day. Like, I was really into it. And so that's kind of where I started really waking up, because I noticed as the people that I was talking to, all the other gamers that I would play with, they were all talking about like nonsensical stuff. And I was seeing all these things happening in the world, and I'm like, well, I don't really like how that's going. So needless to say, I ended up not playing with them as much, and then literally not gaming anymore. It's almost as if what was happening in the world made it so I didn't want to continue gaming. I started realizing and seeing gaming as entertaining me. And I've talked about entertaining before, and entertainment is to entrain one's mind, like it's to, control the mind. That's what entertainment is. And we have all these entertainment franchises of all different sorts, truly meant to control our minds. And luckily those people or those beings and forces, and no one's coming to save us, because in a sense we all have to take it upon our individual selves to change the way that we're living as we become more aware of what's actually happening in the world, or more so what's happened. That's one of the interesting or fascinating things I find in the GIA reports. And I know I mention them often, but, should this information prove to be true, we're in for some drastic changes into the way we do live life. So going back on to what I was talking about, the video, it was just very synchronistic that I, in a sense, experienced a change while watching her video. So in a sense, it inspired me to do something that she was fully talking about in that video, of stepping forward and just doing, not caring about what someone else might think whether I pause or my cat, if you can hear it, is meowing in the background, whether any of that information like bother, or that not information, that stuff bothers people or not, it's just to trust that what I have to say is helpful to at least one person. And then that means we're all connected, because if we're all connected or helping one person, then we're all essentially helping each other. And then hopefully we can, as I said, get out of this situation that we're in and perhaps get back to our original abilities, or avatars, or however we want to see it, like to get back to our ability to truly manifest, and manifest at deciding something is, and if it's for the benefit of the collective, then it's brought in as well as we work with what God intends us to keep in balance. And I would really love to meet with all the UNN people, because, you know, quite honestly, I often wonder, like, how many people on the internet are actual real people and how many are bots. I've had experiences where I know I'm playing against a bot and it feels like an AI on a video game. Yeah, playing against AI is often, I feel, or like super advanced intelligence. You don't need to meow. Anyways, so I just wanted to do that extra little bit of sharing. And because I truly do feel that we are going to move into a more authentic world. And that's the important takeaway of the whole New Earth thing. It's not more technology. It's, well, most importantly, it's looking after oneself and not giving power away. But it's being more authentic to who each of us is, and not concerning ourselves if people don't think we're where we should be. I often remember hearing about that, of having my mother-in-law concerned that I wasn't where, or we were, or my wife and I weren't where we should be. And so that's essentially the authenticness of these audios, is just speaking the way that I'm speaking and not worrying about trying to edit them, or making sure that I got down to my point. Is just basically speaking because I feel almost guided to speak. Not as if I'm channeling. I don't think I'm channeling. I think that I'm just talking, and it all makes organized sense to me. And whether or not I get to this giant climax of a conclusion or not, or an epiphany within the conversation, I think that, you know, everything has weight. And honestly, and in a sense as well, when I think about that, is that if our voices are vibrational frequencies, perhaps half a sentence also, or the half the point, or the more important part of the point, if that's all that's spoken, is sometimes maybe all that's required. And maybe we don't have to play out all these other moments like we see in the TV shows. You know, that's even an example of a great idea, of a possibility. What if all of the situations that we live in our daily lives, that we're basically going through a program of all these rom-coms that tell us how life should be, and therefore that's what we're projecting. And, you know, maybe if we don't have those movies in our head, maybe we do start treating each other much nicer, and maybe that's all we need. And maybe, like, everyone could hear this, and then tomorrow we could all wake up differently. Because wouldn't that be amazingly so? And to spend more time with what's the one thing we could all change, all of us, every single person, all at once, that would be significant enough and agreeable enough that could dynamically change our world for the betterment of everyone, including Earth and God and everyone. That's another thing I like to think about. But I get it. I understand that when I see all the cars driving back and forth to work, that most people don't feel they have the time to do this. And I would honestly say that that seems to be like part of the matrix, like the matrix trying to put in excuses or reasons or vibrational frequencies to convince us to essentially not do it. When I guess change comes in just changing 1 minute, like if you want to put it into a temporal container, that even if we just change a minute, it brings me back to when I first started this whole healing journey. I was watching this channel called Gaia.com, and they had videos on there that were for self mastery and self growth and learning stuff. And I really like to learn stuff and to get stronger. Like like self mastery type of stuff. But anyways, when I first started listening to Ram Dass, and I couldn't even like I would try to put the audio on, and keeping in mind these are like 4 or 5 minute talks, sometimes 10, like between 4 to 10 minute talks, and I couldn't. Like sometimes I would fall asleep, like just lying there listening, or after like 2 minutes, and fall asleep. And I like wake up. I'm like, oh, I just missed the whole thing. They were putting me to sleep, and in a sense, it was partially because it was new. I just felt guided to listen to them, and the information was kind of boring, I guess. Like, I don't know if boring was the right word, but they did put me to sleep. It just fascinated me enough to put it on, but then it pushed me to sleep. So what that gives as an example is in the beginning of every journey, I was making successes, I guess, just by putting them on for 1 minute and falling asleep. And then the next time I was putting it on for 1 minute and falling asleep. So it was basically just building up my tolerance. And then one day tolerance turned to appreciation for those audios. And now I listen to them every time. And when I listen to them, even though I've heard them like 100 times each maybe, I always find something fascinated by listening to them again. And yeah, there's a new cognition or some sort of synchronistic cognitive, I don't know, some sort of insight, yeah, there. And yeah, so that goes all the way back to the video that Crystal was doing, and she was essentially rippling and affecting me. And then I go off and do this video, and like I said, even if it's only one being, and I don't necessarily mean just Homo sapien, it could be a mosquito that doesn't get killed simply because someone thought about life a little bit different. And so it's just, yeah, it was really interesting to observe that ripple happening in between her videos and the ones that I'm recording now. I honestly feel that our guides and our angels and our higher selves and the beings that are working with us, whether here on the earth realm or in the metaphysical, astral, like the 5D or higher type of things, that we're all working towards something grand. And I know I was just about to say something, and then something grand comes out, and I'm like, well, no, I want to say what I thought I was going to say, but I didn't say it anyways. I don't know why. So I hope you've been enjoying looking at this orange. I don't know. As I said, I really just like to have some sort of image that the video is. And, in a sense, one of the things that I discovered with my videos was that I was creating what I realized was digital art. And I had this one download before, and perhaps I'll do it in the future, is to create this rather large space where we would merge frequencies, sounds like the solfeggio and the binaural beats and that type of stuff, but to connect those sounds and visual digital art that was in the three, like that was digital but was in a 3D sort of fashion, and to put it throughout a bar, not a bar as in, anyways, in a club, not, yeah, club's maybe a better word, and then to serve water, and no one's able to speak. Like they're not able to, but like the idea is that we don't speak. We all just use our other like body language and I don't know, nods and stuff, or and essentially it would be a place to experience these different sounds, and maybe even the sounds themselves could be to the loud enough that it would discourage people from being able to talk, like to obvious talk. But the idea of this place would be to encourage our telepathic abilities, to encourage our communicating in ways other than, through just words. And I know clubs definitely do that, and like the dance clubs and stuff, because you're dancing and all. But this would create a different environment, and using these different sounds and theta waves and all these different alpha waves, like this different style of music that's coming out, that perhaps that would help develop our telepathic abilities, possibly. I have no idea how going from talking to an orange to talking about developing telepathic issues. But anyways, that was that club idea is definitely something I can envision. And it, in a sense, not until much later did I realize that, oh, hey, those videos that I was doing with me talking and showing all these beautiful pictures, and in a sense it was digital art that I was doing. And yeah, I really enjoy doing those things, because there's so much love infused into them. And yeah, interestingly enough, I start talking about love, and I think that I want to, in the near coming future, do an entire video on just the topic of love. Because in that possibility, we'll say it, with the Kimberly Gogan and the GIA future, is that we are going to, as Homo sapiens, we're in the process of essentially reconnecting to love, and that love is God. And we're in the process of doing that. And that's why all the chaos that we see is occurring, is because there, as I said, forces that are trying to stop that. And the reason is because if we are no longer fully controlled by them, they no longer have their greatest asset, which was Homo sapiens. And so, yeah, I don't know. I hope that something I said added on to the effectiveness of my other video, but then again, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Because for hope, basically, when we hope things, we are holding on to an expectation. And I think previously today I was also talking about how when we have traumas, we're holding on to the past. And so when we're doing those holding on to the futures through hope, and through I want, for example, like I want to, like those definitive wants, when we hold on to that and hope and expectation, and then we're also caught by traumas and stuff of the past, then we limit our ability to move in the moment of the now. Because now I'm seeing as it has all potential available, and simply the consciousness that we hold collapsing through choice, the reality that we want to experience. And that's essentially how it should be. But all of these systems they put onto us, and all this programming that we started to experience since essentially being born, especially through elementary school and high school, then that forges the reality, which is about to come to an end. And as I was mentioning before, I guess this is like a summation as well. Us being essentially an empire, the American empire. This is just, it was divided up into different countries, but essentially it was the American empire, that we're just moving into another age. And some people call it the golden age. So rather than before we were in a dark age where we had to have a 21% of dark versus light, now we move into a golden age where perhaps we don't necessarily need to choose low vibrational choices any longer. And as more limitations are pulled back on us and we're able to do more, perhaps we can start all choosing what I kind of always thought was God's choice. So I always saw it, or not always, but I've come to see it as that free will is the ability to choose whatever. But that perhaps in the beginning there was God's choice, which was all the good choices. There would be all the fruits on the table and you could choose whatever fruit you want. But there were things that wasn't God's choice. And so those things weren't things that were acceptable. And so that the true apple issue, maybe that was about choosing something that wasn't God's choice. It wasn't from all the fruit on the table. It was the one fruit that you weren't allowed to. But that's because it didn't make sense. See, there's certain things that I've talked about like that don't make sense. And in a society where things were a lot better, maybe there's certain things that didn't make sense, like to harm another, for example. To many people doesn't make sense and they would never do it, not even in the worstest of circumstances. There are some people. And anyways, I think I'm going off on another tangent like that. That's something else that I'll definitely like to talk about, is that idea of free will, and that we will return to where, there is abundance, and abundance being enough for all and never more than we need. And yeah. So anyways, I'm going to leave that for later and I'm going to sign off for now. I thank you for sharing your attention with me, and thank you for choosing to grow yourself, choosing to heal yourself. And I guess that's in a sense what these audios are going to be, is just simply me talking about my experience. At least that's what the Crystal, the video that the woman Crystal had done, is that it's about sharing experiences, because sharing it with one person can help that one person, and then that person helps that person, and that person helps that person, and that's essentially is our job, simply then becoming just being ourselves. And yeah, I have so much to talk about, because if we can get these topics and we can get the conversation of topic moved away from of what's happening in world politics, or any politics for that fact, and we start changing the direction of the conversation and away from sharing their propaganda, then we can essentially be in a better position to adjust to the changes as they come. So I hope that made sense. Anyways, thank you very much again for sharing with me, and I hope you have a grand evening wherever you are. Much love. Source flows through me.